When things started to fall apart inside Lydia and Mark's home, they knew someone was trying to reach out to them. They had been through it before, but not on the scale they were about to experience. The first night, their son Flinch screamed from his room, pointing at the window. When they got into his room, they were horrified by what they saw. The pictures on the wall were out of place and the window pane was opened. The curtains were soaked as it was raining and pouring heavily into the room. "Flinch, is that you?" the horrified mom called out. The floor was a bit wet, like someone had walked on it, but there weren't any footprints. The wardrobe was turned inside out. Mark said it wasn't Flinch because he knew them. This was a different ghost. As they were speaking, the light went out and the babies screamed some more. The window lost its locks like someone had opened it with violence. They carried their son and rushed downstairs. Once in the living room, the couch was turned upside down and the place was in disarray. They knew for sure they were dealing with a violent ghost. "Speak," Mark said, holding on to a cross, "or forever hold your peace." Then whispers, like someone was laughing from inside the TV. Yes, it was a voice, whispering from inside their TV. She hissed and laughed, and then everything became normal again. The light flickered and became steady, but the rain was still pouring down with force, and thunder and lightning shone into the room. They sat staring at the TV that was off, and in a whisper they heard someone saying something about Cedar Creek. From inside the TV, a hand came out, and in a few minutes it disappeared like it was never there. "Cedar Creek," Mark said. "I am not going back there." Then the voice echoed loudly, "You must go back to Cedar Creek, else there will be problems." The voice faded into laughter. Then everything became still again. When he opened his eyes, he realized he had woken up from a terrible nightmare. Everything seemed normal. When he looked at his wife, she was sleeping peacefully on the bed, so he rushed over to the child's bedroom. There he was sleeping peacefully. The window that was broken last night was fine, like nothing had happened. He stared outside and realized there had been no rain. Everything he saw was a dream. He went back to meet his wife, and when he got into the room, he froze. She looked like she had seen a ghost. "What?" he asked her. "Cedar Creek," she whispered. "She wants us in Cedar Creek." "Who wants you in Cedar Creek?" he asked. "The woman." "What woman?" he said, confused. "The one whose body was left to rot." "She wants closure for her family," she murmured. Mark watched as she spoke like she was possessed by a demon. Then he remembered. He had just woken up from a similar dream, and she was recounting what he had seen in his dream. He went and touched her, then she woke up. Only then did he realize she had been sleep-talking when he walked in, but the message was clear. When she was fully awake, she didn't remember anything. Mark rushed over breakfast and grabbed his lunch bag. Flinch, his son, was also ready for school. They had to hurry or they would be held up in traffic. On their way, he saw a woman, her face hidden in long hair. He tried to calm himself, but he was sure he had seen her before. It was the woman in his dream. She was wearing the same dress, but her face was hidden. As he tried to focus, he ran into a car just outside his son's school from behind. But luckily it wasn't serious. It wasn't déjà vu. It was happening. "Flinch," he said, bidding him goodbye. "I'll see you later at the close of school." As he drove toward his office, his mind wasn't at peace. He kept seeing the woman's face all morning and was unable to concentrate. He tried to shake it off once he got to the office. A few minutes after he settled at his desk, his phone rang. He was startled by the call as the ringtone shattered the silence in the surroundings, making everyone in the station turn around sharply. "Hello," he said. A man responded, "Are you Mark?" "Yes, I am." "Your wife was involved in an accident," the caller said. "She's in St. Louis Hospital." He glanced at his watch. It was about 30 minutes since he left home. He took permission from his boss and headed toward St. Louis Hospital. Once there, the receptionist said there wasn't any emergency, and no one with that name had been transferred there. He stood confused. The caller had mentioned his wife's name, and he was sure. He cursed under his breath. He should have called his wife first to be sure. He brought out his phone and dialed her number. After 2 tries, she answered. "Where are you?" he asked. "I'm about to leave home." "Don't," he said. "I'm coming to get you." "Is there a problem?" she queried. "Not sure, but wait." As she hung up, someone appeared from her windshield. It was the ghost of the woman from her vision earlier. She was too frightened as the woman crawled from outside the windshield into her car. She stepped on the gas and ran into a garbage truck outside her house. A neighbor heard her screaming and called 911. As the husband was parking his car, an ambulance was pulling over at their parking lot. They rushed to her side, brought her down, and felt her pulse. "We are taking her to St. Louis Hospital," the head of the paramedic said. Mark stood there, gasping for air. It was like he had seen the vision before it happened, but it wasn't quite the way he saw it. His heart started beating fast. Flinch. He called the school and told them he was coming to get his son and hung up. As he raced toward the school, he saw someone being slaughtered. He tried to shake it off, but he couldn't. It was as clear as day. A man in a dark occultic dress was cutting a woman to pieces in a forest in broad daylight, but he was driving on a busy residential street. He shouted at the man to stop, but he couldn't. Just then he saw a woman's hand. It was the woman from his dream the night before. She was covered in blood. She seemed to be the one being chopped to pieces, and when he tried to look at the man, his face was hidden. He was huge, about 6 feet, with a bald head and a tattoo of a spider on his wrist. Then he saw the woman walking toward him again, but this time she was covered in mud and maggots. He realized he was seeing something that had happened earlier. The sight was gruesome. The man was packing the dismembered flesh into a black bag and heading toward a river. Then he opened his eyes when someone screamed at him to move his car. Only then did he realize he was still in front of his house, and the ambulance was speeding away. He was confused. It was becoming difficult to understand which was real and which was unreal. The scene was dark red. There was a jar close to where the man had dismembered the body. He tried to see what was inside, a little piece of paper. He couldn't read everything, just a little. It read Sin 8. Then the woman walked slowly past him. He already understood the message. She had been killed and wanted him to help resolve the case. Only he could see the woman. Her body was dirty, filthy, and maggots were pouring out. Her eyes were large, and she smiled with teeth filled with mud. He could see both places clearly. Traffic was building up behind him. He saw the man dump her body inside the river using a big stone tied to the bag. But there was something else. He had left the note in a jar close to the riverbank. Then he realized he had seen this case before. On the news, on ABC News Channel, it happened in Cedar Creek. It was titled, "The Cryptic Confession of Cedar Creek." They had recovered the body of a woman then, or was it a mistake? Maybe there was another one they had missed. He rushed past the ghost and headed for the hospital. Once there, he asked Lydia what happened. She told him what she saw and how she slammed on the gas pedal. "It will be fine," he reassured her, "but first I need to go back to Cedar Creek. There is a case I need to solve. It is about the ghost you saw. I think she is very aggressive because of the manner her killer murdered her." Lydia didn't say a word. "She is very aggressive and angry. She needs to be freed, and I need to start going now," he said. "What about Flinch?" "I will call someone to pick him up," he said. He ran to his car and drove towards Cedar Creek. He wasn't happy because he had sworn never to return, but his family's existence depended on his ability to solve the case. He didn't want anything to happen to his family. It took him 4 hours to drive back to Cedar Creek. It was already late at night. Once there, he called the police station and told them about his vision. The head of the station was in disbelief. There were a lot of missing people after the 2019 and 2025 murders there. Many had been solved. Others were classified as missing because the clues left behind didn't mention them. He went to a box where they kept names and photos of missing people. It was dusty. When he brought it out, he placed it on the table and Mark started to check each one of the photos. He went through them over and over again, but he didn't find any match. The sergeant was worried. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes," Mark said. "None of the photos match the woman I saw." He started to describe her. "She has long black hair reaching her shoulders. She wore blue jeans and a red sweater shirt. She's about 5 feet tall and slim." The sergeant wasn't sure about the description. "No one has come in with such a description here," he said. Mark rubbed his eyes. "I know what I saw." "And you drove all the way from California here?" Mark nodded. "We don't believe in ghost stories, but I respect you because I remember you as the one who helped solve Officer Flinch's murder. When I saw you, I knew who you were, but I think this time you've gotten it wrong." Mark stood up reluctantly, like a man defeated. He looked at his wristwatch. It was past 3 a.m. "I have to go now," he said. "It's late." "You can't leave, and besides, there is a storm coming." Mark sat curled up on a chair, and then he dozed off. Soon it started to rain heavily. There was thunder and lightning, and the station got hit. The power went out, and that was when it struck. Someone slapped the detective across his face. He screamed like he had seen the devil himself. Mark jolted up. "What?" he asked. "Someone slapped me." "How?" "It's just us here." Then Mark saw footsteps walking toward him. It was clear. Someone was walking. "Speak," he said, showing his cross in the direction of the walker. Then everything became quiet, and then the glass shattered. The sergeant was blown off the floor and hung between the ceiling and the floor by something none of them could see. Except for a faint shadow, there was nothing else. "Speak," Mark said aloud, and they heard it clearly. Sin 8, by the river. Whatever it was that held the officer left him, and he fell to the floor with a bang. There were broken glasses everywhere. He was sure there wasn't such a description in their file or any missing person fitting into it, but he was now sure they had to search the area. At dawn, the weather became calm again. He narrated what had happened to other police officers who met their office messed up, but they didn't believe him. He said he didn't want to be beaten again. He had a deep cut on his forehead, and there was something else. A fingerprint had been left in the folder when the ghost shut it violently. The forensics took the fingerprint for analysis, and it came out with a name. She had been declared missing in another state. That was why they didn't have her photo in their file. Her name was Sarah Oliver. When they showed the photo to Mark, he recognized her at once as the woman who had been tormenting him and his family. They organized boats and went to the riverside. The tide was high after the rain. 2 divers went into the river, and there at the bottom they saw 3 black bags. They pulled them to the bank, and they contained the remains of 3 different individuals, 2 male and 1 female. It was determined immediately that the woman was Sarah Oliver. The sergeant was surprised because they had been in that area a few months ago, where they recovered a jar with the inscription Sin 8, and there was a dead woman by the riverbank. "Maybe there's a copycat after all," he said, "because how is it possible for one man to murder 4 people all by himself?" As they were talking, Mark said he wanted to go home. His job was done, as they had recovered the bodies, but it wasn't done yet. "You said the killer had a spider tattoo on his wrist and he's bald, about 6 feet tall." "Yes." "Did you see his face?" "No," Mark said, shaking his head. "He was wearing a hood over his head." The sergeant stared at him. "So how did you know he was bald if he had a hood over his head?" "I don't know, but I knew he was bald." "Can I go now?" "My wife is in the hospital," he pleaded. "You can," the sergeant said. As he entered his car, he saw someone driving into the station. He was the man he had described a while ago to the sergeant, bald with a tattoo on his hand. He froze as the man came down from a black Chevrolet sedan and walked into the police station. He was a cop. Mark felt cold sweat on his face, and he wanted to go back and warn them, but just then a truck lost control and came directly at him. Before the impact, he shut his eyes, and when he opened them again, he was at home sleeping in his bed, and his wife was sleeping by his side. She kissed him and said, "Honey, it's been a long night." "The rain is pouring down heavily and there's thunder and lightning." "Say something," Lydia said. I need to get you guys ready for the day." He picked his wristwatch and saw it was past 6 a.m., the exact same time everything started. So it was all a dream, he muttered to himself.